Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. Today's episode challenges one of the most entrenched assumptions in human history, that morality is beyond the reach of science. For centuries, ethics has been seen as a realm of intuition, culture, and philosophy, immune to empirical scrutiny. But what if morality, like medicine or physics, could be studied, measured, and refined? Sam Harris argues that the well-being of conscious creatures is not a subjective construct, but an observable reality. If suffering can be quantified and flourishing can be tracked, then morality is not just a matter of opinion. It is a field of knowledge waiting to be explored. Can neuroscience reveal the biological roots of ethical decision-making? Does data-driven altruism prove that some moral actions are objectively better than others? And if morality can be mapped like any other science, what does that mean for the way we govern, legislate, and live? To explore more about the concepts and thinkers discussed, including moral realism, the is-ought problem, and cognitive science of morality, please visit the episode description. Scroll to the end for a link to the episode webpage, where you'll find further resources, book recommendations, and an option to support my work through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support is vital to support the continuation of this long-form independent content. I really appreciate it. Sam Harris argues that the rejection of moral objectivity is not merely an academic stance, but a dangerous concession to ethical paralysis. If morality is reduced to cultural preference or subjective opinion, then no moral claim, no matter how cruel or oppressive, can be said to be objectively wrong, only unpopular. This is precisely the concern raised by Bernard Williams, who warns that moral relativism leaves us unable to meaningfully critique systemic injustice. Harris contends that this failure to recognize moral truth is not a reflection of morality's complexity, but a refusal to apply the same intellectual rigor to ethics that we do to other fields of knowledge. If we accept that human flourishing is real and that suffering can be quantified, then moral knowledge should be pursued, refined, and applied with the same seriousness as medical or technological advancements. The history of moral progress suggests that ethical reasoning has always been shaped by empirical discoveries. Consider the abolition of slavery. Once justified through economic necessity and religious tradition, slavery is now universally condemned. But this transformation was not the result of moral intuition alone. It was driven by the accumulation of empirical knowledge about human dignity, economic productivity, and the psychological impact of oppression. Similarly, the advancement of women's rights has been supported not just by philosophical arguments, but by research demonstrating the economic and social benefits of gender equality. According to the World Economic Forum's 2023 Global Gender Gap Report, countries that prioritize women's empowerment experience higher GDP growth, lower infant mortality rates, and greater political stability. A child born in a society where women have equal access to education is statistically more likely to survive infancy, pursue higher education, and contribute to economic innovation. If moral progress can be tracked through measurable improvements in well-being, then morality is not merely a cultural construct, it is a domain of knowledge. Despite this, skepticism persists. Alasdair MacIntyre, in After Virtue, argues that modern moral discourse has become fragmented, with competing ethical traditions making objective agreement impossible. The relativist challenge appears undeniable. If morality is a science, why do cultures differ so wildly in their ethical systems? Why does honor killing persist in some societies while others enshrine gender equality? If moral truth is real, shouldn't we already see universal agreement? The power of MacIntyre's argument is in its plausibility, but his mistake is assuming that moral truth must be immediately obvious rather than gradually discoverable. After all, humans debated the shape of the Earth for centuries. That did not make the Earth flat. Scientific progress is rarely instantaneous. It requires investigation, iteration, and the willingness to challenge entrenched beliefs. If moral realism is true, it is no surprise that it would follow a similar trajectory. The practical application of this argument is already shaping global decision-making. Effective altruism, pioneered by thinkers like Peter Singer and William MacAskill, applies cost-benefit analysis to philanthropy, directing resources toward interventions that maximize well-being per dollar spent. According to GiveWell, malaria prevention through insecticide-treated bed nets costs approximately $5,000 per life saved, making it one of the most effective humanitarian interventions. But beyond the statistics lies something even more compelling. Every $5,000 spent is a mother who will not wake to find her child lifeless, a future that will not be extinguished by a preventable disease. The ability to measure and compare moral interventions does not strip them of their depth. It ensures that moral efforts are not wasted on inefficiency, but are optimized for real impact. Critics warn that reducing morality to empirical metrics risks oversimplifying ethical complexity. Amartya Sen, in The Idea of Justice, argues that justice cannot be reduced to a single universal principle, but must be understood as a pluralistic, evolving concept. Harris would likely agree that morality is complex, but he would reject the idea that complexity negates objectivity. Just as economic models cannot predict markets with absolute certainty, but still provide valuable insights, moral science does not require infallibility to be useful. Ethics should be seen as an ongoing process of refinement, not a static set of dogmas. The complexity of morality does not undermine the possibility of moral knowledge. It demands a more sophisticated approach to discovering it. The rejection of moral realism is not humility, it is an abdication of responsibility. It is easy to admire the intellectual elegance of Harris's argument from a distance, but the real test is whether we are willing to apply it to shape our choices, our policies, and our future around moral truths we can measure. The tools of reason, science, and empirical analysis are available to us. The only question that remains is whether we will use them before indifference, ignorance, or hesitation allows suffering to endure. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Deeper Thinking podcast, an audio essay read by me, Holly, your digital narrator. To learn more about the subjects covered today, check out the links in the show notes. Until next time.